Okay, hi everyone. This is Ron McKinney with Pas de Photo with our latest webinar. This time we're having Haze join us from France. It's going to be pretty exciting. Just want to remind everyone that we'll be taking questions in the chat box. Right now, your chat is defaulted to be sent just to the host and panelists. I'd like you to change that to be sent to everyone so everybody can see your questions. You know, from there, I just want to have Haze kind of like introduce himself and talk a little bit about, you know, how he got into photography and started doing dance photography.
Awesome. You want me to introduce myself now? Or okay, cool. So my name is Haze Square. I'm super happy to be here, and thank you, Ron, for inviting me. I'm a photographer now I've been a photographer for almost 10 years now. And I first started as an event photographer. And I was photographing a lot of performances, stage performances, and festivals. And this is how I was introduced to dance. And this is how I fell in love with dance photography. But I was kind of frustrated at the time because I wanted to have more control on the stuff that I was photographing. And that's how I slowly went over to develop at first a personal project where I was photographing dancers in urban settings, basically.
And how long, how long were you doing like the events before you started shooting dancers like that? Were you doing it for a couple of years or?
Oh yeah, I did that for maybe 4 years.
Okay.
4 years. And yeah, I got tired of doing it. One, because I didn't have any creative control on what I was actually photographing, but still there was kind of there was the joy of capturing something that, you know, maybe couldn't happen again, you know, the moments and anything that could happen on stage. That was at first why I was doing that. But then, you know, looking at other people's work, what was possible with photography, I wanted to tell other stories, or at least create something that visually was more exciting for me. So after 4 years, that's slowly I started to like invite dancers from the city I was in. Back then I was living in Strasbourg, in the northeast of France. And with local dancers, we were like wandering in the streets of Strasbourg and taking pictures together.
So like, I know we're going to talk about the work you're doing, you know, of course, more currently, and how you're using light with it and all that. But when you first started shooting dancers on your own, when it was just you and the dancer, was there like a moment, you know, when you're working with a dancer in that very early going where it was like, oh, wow, this is really what I love doing. You know, this is really cool.
Yeah, right away. I had that feeling already on stage because I was fascinated with the performance, the grace, what the human body is capable of doing. Basically, that was it. Something that I never felt with other form of art, like or maybe, you know, if I was fascinated by the body, but I wasn't that fascinated in, for example, sports or athletes, even though I shoot them also now. I was more drawn to dance at the time. And also when I first started photographing ballet dancers and ballerinas in particular, I was fascinated by the precision and how some of them managed to do over and over the same movement really precisely, or I was able to place, you know, the foot or the hand, the head in a very precise way in my photograph. And this is something that was really, really, I mean, that kind of, that was perfect for the type of work and my approach in photography.
Awesome, awesome. So today we're gonna, you know, like talk about your current work and how you brought, you know, using, you know, light to add to your, you know, portraits outdoors. When did you begin adding light and why?
Well, at first I didn't really know what I was doing. So at the same time, I was kind of learning the craft, learning how to use my tools. So there was no planning. My first sessions, we were like, okay, you want to shoot with me? Let's go there, and we'll figure something out on the spot. And that was basically it. And as time went by, when looking at my pictures, there were a lot of things that I didn't like in my early work, and I was always asking myself this question: um, how can I fix this? How can I make better images? And this is how slowly I changed my approach in photography and started planning out my photo shoots, discussing a little bit more with the dancers beforehand, and maybe choose the outfit, choose a better time of the day, and all that stuff. So I started with, like a lot of photographers, with natural light, with the sun, and depending on the time of the day, I had different results. So I quickly discovered that I preferred shooting early in the morning or at the end of the day instead of in the middays with the midday sun, because I didn't want to have that hard contrast and those shadows in the eyes and all that stuff. So it started like that, and then of course, when you start out, you don't necessarily have the budget or to have all these fancy tools. Like a flash, it costs something to buy a flash. So I thought that the best way to learn first is to kind of understand all the limitations that I have and how to create with them. So that forced me to be creative and find way to get the results that I wanted, but with only the tools that I had at the time. And then when I felt comfortable with my technique, with my tools, I decided to incorporate slowly a flash. I have a few examples here that I can show you that from that time where I was shooting in natural light.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And while you're doing that, while you're looking for that, and we do have a question already, and Luis was asking how you contacted dancers back then. A lot of times these days we're contacting dancers through Instagram. Is that what you did back then, or are you like reaching out to the schools to see if anybody would do it with you?
The schools, that was my approach. There still are a few schools in Strasbourg, and I reached out to some of them, trying to know to reach out to the advanced classes, because early on I wanted to work with people that had a little bit of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily I found someone that was interested, and I started doing all my work with that person back then. A lot of the first year I maybe worked with 2 dancers at most. They were in all my pictures, and basically I can say that they were part of my learning. How you say this? I learned dance photography with them, basically.
Right. That's the way to do it. Is you learn by doing and continuing to study, and seeing what you could have done differently and made it better. And so this picture here is an example of a really bad shot you got in the early days, right? Because that's not bad at all. That's awesome.
So I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just that at the time, like I said before, I was figuring out what I liked on the when shooting things, So there was a lot of trial and error. So I was, taking a lot of pictures. Half of them, if not more, were really bad. And with time, you reduce the amount of bad images that you create, because you were able to plan out a little bit your session. We had luck that day because it was an overcast day. So I think we shot this image. It was during the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. Nobody was there because it started raining like a few hours after this session, and that overcast day gave us that kind of soft light, and that soft light that wraps the dancer. And at the time, I wasn't really understanding what it was doing to my image, and how if I wanted that type of exposition of the type of light that I had to shoot during an overcast day. But with time, I understood that, okay, looking at the weather, if I go out shooting right now, this is the type of light that I can get. So that was actually made in Toulouse. I wasn't living in Toulouse yet. It was during a European tour that I was doing back in the days when I was living in an RV.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, sorry. Something happened there. I hit the wrong key.
Yes, I have another example here from the same session. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, great. Sorry.
I was chatting with somebody and hit the wrong key and something came up and it was
Okay.
kind of weird.
Can you see the picture right now or no?
No, huh? I think I may. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we see it.
There we go. Yeah, that's from the same session, and I don't hate this image, but in terms of lighting, this is absolutely not what I would do today.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to go more for a more dramatic look these days. I shoot more in the shadows these days because I'm always concerned about the depth of my image and wanting to have. I don't like, when there's too much light in my scene. I like to play with lights to draw attention to something in particular in the shot.
Yeah.
And again, the performance is great, but I wasn't able at the time to really understand what I was doing. I already had that. The way I compose the shot is something that I often do. Playing with lines, with guiding lines. Yeah, I think that's it. And that's something that I often do. But for the lighting approach, that's something that I tend to do less these days. And of course, this was made without any diffuser or flash, or this is natural light.
And just to talk about what went right with these pictures in a midday shoot, even though, it's a little bit cloudy, so the light is a lot softer, it's still that in that very first shot, the ballerina was looking up, so her face was really well lit, and here
exactly
the ballerina is down, so while her body has those really nice, has a high key up on top, the lighting up on top, her face is not as lit. And and if you had added a light there that would have, hit her face and the rest of her body, the way you described that you do now, it would have even been more impactful. But this is still, to me, a very beautiful shot, that many of us would be very proud of.
Yeah. My intention of showing this one is not saying that it is bad.
Oh, no,
it's
I
just
know.
That it's just that I've changed over time, and it shows that, as you grow old with experience and all that stuff, your tastes change too. So you try different things and go other ways. Maybe someday I'll go back to shooting only natural. I don't know,
Right,
but
right.
But basically, I wouldn't do it this way if I had to reshoot it like tomorrow. So
Lisa is actually asking that question. What would you do different for this shot, and this pose if you were doing it right now?
Well, if I was able to bring like one light, I would have knocked down a little bit the ambient light, so that not everything so that she stands out a little bit more from the background. This would be my approach, like maybe I have a one step of light darker behind her could be my approach today. But again, it's a matter of what you want to convey, what you want to tell, what story you want to tell. So this may work for me now, but this may not work for somebody else who may feel that this is the perfect approach. Not the perfect approach, but a better approach.
Yep. Okay, so do we want to start looking at some of the pictures that you want to show about, like what you're using with the light now, and talk about how you developed that?
Well, two things. I'm going to show you this one because it's a direct. It will work with what I just said. I can share it. Yeah, perfect. Here it is.
Okay. Yep.
So unfortunately, I don't have the before, because the before is important here. You said it on the picture that I showed before this one. I added a little bit of light for her torso and her head, a small light that's on the side on the camera left, because she was completely in shadows. Half of her body was completely in shadows at the bottom of the image.
Right, right.
Because the building is really tall, so the lights couldn't get in, and I wanted to be a little bit more. Can't find the word. Homogene. I don't know how you say this in English. More balanced, maybe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
On the entire body.
Balance between the lower leg and the upper leg in terms
Yeah,
of light.
that's it.
Yeah, that makes
I still wanted to keep that gradual light coming from above, because obviously when you look at the background, the light's coming from above and going down. So I didn't want to put too much light. I don't want to make it obvious that it was lit.
right.
And this is kind of the approach I have now, is having more control with additional lighting, but I don't want it to be that obvious that I added an additional lights. When I shoot outside, of course. Indoors, it's a different story. I have another way of shooting dancers when I shoot indoors.
Yep. Good. Because I never would have guessed that you added light to that. It was very subtle.
Yeah, that's why unfortunately I don't have the before, because the before really shows that. Yeah. I think I have a few examples. Oh yeah, I want to talk about this one, because it's really important in my approach in lighting dancers indoors. Boom. Boom. Yes. Great. So that image was made, I think it was 3 years or 3 years ago, I think. Yeah. And we were lacking space because I'm using a wide angle, so it's really narrow. And at first I wanted to have the light coming from the top, and I really wanted those shadows at the bottom, if you look at the legs. But I had to find another way to light her. And unfortunately, the only way for me to do it and to have something balanced, because I wanted to keep that symmetrical image, was to put 2 lights on both sides pointing down at her. And I didn't like that approach. I still feel that it's a nice image, but I think it would have been better if I was able at the time to put my one light at least overhead, because I would have had a better contrast ratio on my dancer. But then, yeah,
I don't know. That's just simply amazing to me. And I love how you're still using the ambient light in there, you know, like the yellow light that's reflecting on the floor. And so you're not like overpowering it with your light. We're having some questions dating back to your picture before with the dancer that was hanging off the window, and then, you know, and if it's any different here, but what kind of lights are you using and modifiers as well for these?
Okay, for the picture before, I was using the Godox 8300 Pro, and attached to it is the Broncolor Beauty Box 65.
Okay.
Looks a bit like like a collapsible beauty dish.
Okay.
It's not really a beauty dish, but it looks like it. And for this shot, I used 2 Broncolor Cirrus L 800 watts on both sides of the camera. One has a softbox, a 90 by 120 centimeters softbox with a grid, and it's double diffused, if I'm not mistaken. And the other one is, I think it's the beauty box on the other one, because unfortunately I wanted to have the same softbox on both sides, but I only have one big softbox.
Okay.
So we had to cheat a little.
And then when you we have another question. It's asking like what you do with white balance when you took this shot. You know, I tend, since I shoot in all raw, I tend to just shoot in auto white balance and then I just correct everything in raw. Is that what you do, or do you set your
I
white
I
balance?
used, yeah, I used to do that, but it depends because for a shot like that, for example, I'm on a tripod,
Mm-hmm.
and because we're going to take multiple shots, and I don't want to recompose again and again. So once
Right.
it's on the tripod, it's set.
Yep.
And also, sometimes I have things laying around that I can't move, and that maybe I can erase in post. At least I can't. No, it's not that I can't move them, because obviously I'm going to move them afterwards. So no, um, yeah, basically it's that. Not for this one, but when I shoot at outdoors. Let's imagine I'm shooting outdoors, and there are a lot of tourists behind me.
Right.
So I'm going to be on a tripod. I'm going to shoot the dancer, and once I have the shot, I'm going to take multiple shots, and to have multiple plates and erase the people afterwards, or a garbage can or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also do that for places like that for whatever reason, sometimes because I have out, that's it. I have my light in the shot. I think on the upper left and upper right side, because I'm trying to have my lights as close as possible. Sometimes I have a little bit of my softbox in the shot. So in order to erase it easily, I take a last shot and just back the both of the lights, and I'm able to erase them easily. And then for the white balance, in order to ease my work in post, I want it to be fixed for each and every image that I take. So I used to do it with auto white balance, but now I set it prior to the shot so that I know when I take all my images, they will be exactly the same color temperature.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I love that.
So I have another image that I want to talk about. That is really cool. It's a series of image. Yeah, I'm gonna take this one. It's the accessories that I started to include in my work. Something that when you're staging your dancers, um, you're giving them. Sometimes I'm not giving them a lot of space to move in.
Mm-hmm.
I want them in a specific place, and like I said before, what fascinated me with ballet dancers is the fact that they can redo the same performance, and we can place precisely the hand, the feet, and all these different elements. And I'm always trying to find a balance between being too staged and giving them a little bit of movement, and um, letting them improvise a little bit,
Right.
because then sometimes it feels too fake. I don't know if it's the right word, but um, yeah. There's nothing like, this is from my days when I was shooting dancers on stage. There's nothing then like capturing a raw performance or a raw emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to recreate that over and over again. You kind of losing it after a while. So I'm trying to find the right balance between staging everything and placing everything in a particular place, and still giving them a little bit of room to create and to express themselves. And also to add a little bit more movement in my shots. I early on started um, adding little accessories in my images, and fabrics are one of them, because it also adds a little bit of movement, and you can also play with the curves and lines of the dancers and their fabric, and at least for me, it adds something else.
Mm-hmm.
That was made in a museum with a dancer from the Capitale de Toulouse here.
So like obviously, like I can just imagine. I'm surprised nobody's asked this yet, but so far, every shot that I've seen, the bridge, the one after that, with in the same shoot, with the girl hanging from the windows, and then the previous one, which was at the interior shot, and then this one, your locations are absolutely fabulous. And, so my first question is, like, is it easy to get access to these, or do they give you permission? How does that work that you're getting these fabulous locations?
Well, it depends. I did in the city I'm living in right now in Toulouse. I worked with the tourism bureau office,
Hmm.
yeah, and I made a campaign for them. So obviously, I didn't have to do anything to get the access to all these amazing places. And once I shot in all these museums, churches, and I kept the right contacts in each place. And for those who were still interested in giving me the access to their location, I was able to come back there and make other images, maybe for me or maybe for a client. So
Right.
that was my way in for Toulouse. For other cities, it depends. I used to like send hundreds, if not thousands, of emails and calls and ask and just show my work and explain them exactly what I'm doing and ask them if I have permission, if I can do anything with them um, on inside or maybe outdoors. And out of maybe 100 emails, I get one response, and that person maybe fell in love with my images and was willing to give us access to the location. So you have to ask, it costs nothing. And these are my two methods. It's directly from a client sometimes, so they did the work for me. And for personal projects or for other types of shoots, I just ask the location, and if they feel my work, then I get the access.
Okay, so now let's come back to this image, okay? Because I'm looking at this and it looks like you've got a, light coming from above her pointing down that we don't see it. So was this one of those deals where you, shot it a couple of times and the light was above her and then you took it out of the shot, or what's happening here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's two lights here. There are two lights. One that you can obviously feel when you look at the columns because they're side lit. You can see the
Mhm.
light on the columns on the left. So in the original image, you kind of see my light there. I was using, I think, a silver umbrella for the backlight, for the light on the left side. And on the right side, it was again my 90 by 120 softbox that was placed a little higher than the columns and pointing down on her.
Mhm.
And it was visible in the shot originally, so I had to take an additional image to erase it afterwards.
That's interesting, like I've often thought about doing things like that, but I've never really thought, oh, I should put on a tripod, shoot it a second time, and and use that. I really appreciate, like hearing that from you. It's cool.
It's additional work. So I think twice every time. Do I really want to add that extra step in my editing, or do I really need it? Sometimes I don't, so I don't do it. And sometimes it really changes my image because I'm able to place it at an angle otherwise impossible if I had placed it outside the frame.
Right.
So it's an interesting option. You have to keep it in your tool bag,
Exactly.
let's say. Yeah. Um, there's another image that we kind of talked about together already, but I really love it. It's this one. And boom. I
Yeah.
just realized that a lot of the images that I just showed you guys were made in Toulouse. So I thought I didn't like that city, but obviously I do. So that place as a kind of a story for me because right now it's not accessible because they're redoing it. Oh, I forgot the word. but it's in construction right now.
Yeah, they're renovating it or restoring it or
Renovated.
yeah.
Thank you. And the first time I went there, I wasn't there with her, but with a just gymnastic performer. And 1 hour before the shoot, I broke my flash, and I didn't have anything to replace it. And that place is really, really, really dark. And it was impossible for me to reschedule because that performer was coming from Spain. And it took me a month and a half to actually have that spot and shoot there. So we had to work there with what we had. So no additional lights. And I was really disappointed with the results because I had to bump up the ISO. The images were really, really grainy. I wasn't able to freeze movement. So we were really limited in what we were able to do. The portraits turned out okay, but anything that involved any kind of movement didn't look good. So I was frustrated because I really loved the place. And I decided to ask a permit to go back there. And I finally had it a few months later. Unfortunately, it wasn't for the same performer, but I was able to do a photo shoot for this dancer who at the time was working at the ballet. And that's one of many shots, one of my favorite shots from the session. Yeah, the idea, the composition, the fabric, the pose, the pose is something that I already had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we are using 2 lights for this image.
And you know, the one thing I really like about this image, we've talked about it before, is just how the fabric is going down and into, like, coming towards the camera and into the left corner. It's just like it's just fabulous. So where are the lights? It looks like one is coming from above, and then is the other one behind her, behind the fabric?
Yeah, that's it. One slightly camera right, slightly above. That's the main one. And the one on the back, you can actually see its action on the right side of her face.
Yep.
Right side of her face.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, she's like in a sandwich, light sandwich, if it makes sense.
So you know, like a lot of these pictures that we're seeing are very environmental portraits. Like you're really using the environment of your setting as part of that. So, you know, with that in mind, you know, what lens do you typically start with? Because it's obvious you're starting with a wider, you know, lens. Is that what you usually think is, okay, let me start with a 50 or something like that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Early, my first lens was a 50 mil on a full frame camera. And I almost did all my work with that lens. And then I saw a few other photographers using wide angle lenses. And I was really, really impressed by how you can play with the perspective and even the distortion, the warping of the image. I know there's a lot of people that don't like that, but I love it. You know, extending sometimes the background or maybe the limbs, you know, the arm and legs can appear a little bit longer. And a lot of the dancers love that. So that was a way for me to kind of go beyond that, beyond the fact of creating something. My goal is not to create something real or realistic, but something that looks good to me. So I went beyond that realistic look and went further in creating images where we kind of play with some of the flaws of the lenses, sometimes the flaring, the distortion, the warping, and all this stuff. So I started working with after the 50, I bought a 16-35 and 24-70 because I was a bit lazy. So I liked the option of zooming in and zooming out. And then later on, I decided to go more with prime lenses because I was able to gather a little bit more light, opening wide, and more options, more creative options for me. And you know, I'm going back and forth now, depending on what I want to create. When I'm in a place like this one where I didn't have a lot of space. You know, I'm actually back against a wall, a door. So if I wanted to have those windows up there and that little leak of light, so I had to use a wide angle for this one. And there's also that epic feeling of when you use a wide angle, you know, sucking all the environment into and giving context to an image is something that I really like. So usually on a typical session, I kind of propose a variety of shots, and a few of them are the ones that are going to show the environments and the dancer in the environment, and then I'm gonna tighten my shot and maybe go more for a 50 or an 85 millimeter and do portraits with them.
Okay, so now we've got a few more questions popping in here.
Yeah.
JL is asking about the added light and how you keep it from spilling into the environment, but the camera right light is I think lighting up that doorway there just a little bit, and that's kind of like what you need to separate it from the background. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
is that kind of like what you were thinking as well?
Exactly. Also, to control my light better, I often use a grid on my softboxes. And sometimes I feather my light, so I turn it a little bit away from the dancer or away from that part of the image that I don't want light. Or I'm using a flag. That's the extreme. The other extreme, if I have the resources, of at least the accessory with me on hand, and I use a flag to kind of control the spill on the walls and everything around.
Yep. And then Steve is asking, you know, and we've seen this before, like in your previous shot, is there an assistant there holding the end of the fabric off the camera?
Yeah. For this one, there's it's my wife that's handling the fabric there. She's a specialist now because most of the time it's her that manipulates the fabric. Sometimes it's to me when the fabric goes on the side of the camera, I can actually manipulate the fabric myself, but if I can ask someone else, it's better because I can concentrate a little bit more on what I'm doing behind the camera.
Right. And one more question. Chris was asking about wide angle lenses and they change perspective in an image. And so the right leg is a little bit longer, and as it's going to be with the perspective, you know, with the wide angle lens, and the columns converge a little bit. Did you correct it in post, or did you kind of like leave it the way it was?
I left it the way it was.
Yep.
I sometimes correct it if I feel that I went too far, but I try to do my best to have it right when I shoot it. So when I made this shot, I wasn't shooting tethered. Now I'm almost always shooting tethered because I can clearly see on a bigger screen exactly where things are, and if I went too far in the warping or distortion of my image.
And
was
this a 35 or a 50?
This one, I think it's the 30 millimeter lens, but on the GFX 50S, 50 GFX 50.
Okay.
The first version. So basically, on a full frame, it's like a 24 mil, if I'm correct.
Oh, okay.
I can maybe check. Exactly.
Oh, you don't have to check that, Haze.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Why don't we move on to your next image?
Yeah, my next image. Wait, I have to find it because we were talking about erasing things in post and taking multiple images, and I had an example for that, and here it is. Boom. So it's from the same session. You will recognize the setting. Yeah, I wanted something really surreal for this one.
Right.
I wanted to see all the depth and all the lights that are behind, because there are two versions of this shot, but I chose this one on purpose. So we understand where we are. People that have visited Toulouse and this museum will recognize the place. I wanted the fabric. I wanted that symmetrical image. And what was difficult for us there is that the fabric, she's the one holding the fabric. So we had to find a way, a pose with the arms and hands that doesn't feel too, I don't know how to say this. That's that not too, whew, can't find the word. Not natural, but I want it
Right.
to be.
That
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And for the fabric, I have two assistants there, one on the left and one on the right. So both of them are throwing the fabric in the air. And we took multiple shots because I really wanted to get it in camera and have that almost same shape for on both sides. So yeah, so in the original shot, you can actually see my two assistants in the shot, their arms, because they're really on, you can see the walls on both sides. So they didn't have enough room to, back off and stay out of the shot. And I had a little bit of my light that was on my right side that you could see the softbox that was on the right upper side of the image. So this is the perfect example of an image where I had to take multiple images to erase everybody plus my light that was in the frame.
Right. And I love that you made the choice of having her in the fabric in white, against this really colorful background, because it just pops,
Yeah. That's what I was saying with about my first images, the first ones that I showed you. Wasn't really thinking about what the outfits, what the dancer could bring, and a lot of times people dancer ask me, what colors do you want me to bring? What type of outfits do you want? And at the time I didn't care. I just bring whatever you have on hand, and we'll figure out something on the spot. And here clearly, knowing that I knew I would keep the saturation and all the rich colors around her, so it was that contrast was deliberate. I really wanted her to pop from the environment.
Yeah. Now, JL asks, how many takes do you normally do on average when you're, throwing fabric around like this, whether this one or, like just anytime you're using fabric?
It depends, because it's really, you have no real control on the fabric, especially when you're doing this outdoors. Indoors, it's another story, but outdoors for me is a nightmare. It can go like for one shot, I could take between 30 to 100 maybe. And if really we're having problems with the fabric, it could be way more.
Wow.
Because I really want to have, well, again, it depends also on who is this image for. I wouldn't propose such a complex image for someone who's looking for a set of images for or a resume, or this doesn't really make sense, because we know we're going to spend a lot of time doing that shot. So unless we have unlimited time on location, and even so I'm not sure I would do it. This was really, I was testing my workflow when we did that shot. I had it in mind and thought, hey, if we have an hour to spare, we will try that shot. The session was already over. So that was the bonus shot at the end of the session. We're like, okay, let's try it. And we got it. I don't think we did that many tries on this one, actually, because I had two fantastic assistants that did an amazing job at throwing that fabric. And she was able to keep that pose that for her was an easy pose to maintain. So, it was really a matter of, let's get the fabric perfect.
Yeah.
So it depends. It depends.
And then, how are you working your saturation? Lynn is asking this question in terms of the background versus the dancer. Did you desaturate her a little bit, or did you, add a little saturation in the background just to emphasize the difference in color versus white?
It depends. On this one, I didn't do that because she has a really light skin. So when I boosted a little bit the saturation for the background, it didn't really alter her skin color. So it will skin color or skin, the skin of the dancer will be my reference. So if I'm altering, is that a word, altering?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm altering too much or skin color, then yeah, I might mask it out and retouch only the skin or color grade only the skin separately from the background. And if not, and I'll do an overall color grading. Um, Depends on the dancer I have in front of my lens and the skin color.
Okay. Now, on these images here, where you're like taking your time, are these personal projects, or are the dancers hiring you for their portfolio? And then also, like along those same lines, how many of your sessions sort of like this? Are they dancers hiring you? Are they commercial shoots for dance companies, or are they mainly personal projects? And
Well, usually, if the more complex the images, chances are it's for me
mhm,
or for a big advertising campaign, like the one that I mentioned earlier for the city.
mhm,
Earlier this year, I also did a campaign. I participated in the campaign of the Fujifilm GFX 100S, and they asked me to make a few images like this one. And this is the only time where I'm able to have the right budget and like we discussed earlier, access to locations, great locations, because I'm not taking care of all these different elements. For my, of course, it's harder when it's a personal project because I have to do everything myself. And most of the time for locations like this one, you don't have like an entire day or even entire morning, half a day for your shoot. Sometimes they tell you, okay, you have to come. You can come and do your images, but you have to come 1 hour before the opening of the museum. So you only have 1 hour to make it. So you have to cram into 1 hour the setting up and all the cleaning and all that stuff, and you have to make your images. So when you don't have that much time, and you're working with someone that really wanted, or maybe that hired you to make these images inside that location, you can't do these type of images. It's impossible.
yeah.
So you'll make images a little more easier to make with not that much accessories, if not at all. And so yeah, it depends.
Okay. I think we may have talked about it a little bit before you get off of this one.
Yeah.
But what was your lighting setup here? I can see light on each side of her hair, which makes me think there might be some backlighting going on.
Actually, no. That's the magic of that place is I think if you look closely, a little bit of the ambient and the lights behind kind of spill on her.
Right.
I'm using two lights, and again, they're on both sides of the camera, just at different strength and different light modifiers. Because I wanted to have kind of a balanced exposure on the fabric. I didn't want one side to be more in the shadows than the other.
Right.
So,
Right. And they're up a little bit because the top side of the fabric is lit and the bottom side is in shadow.
exactly. That's the way you look at the image. Exactly how I when people are asking me how can I learn from other photographers, look at the shadows, look at the light placement, be inspired by these things and try and understand how the light behaves in the scene and trying to guess how many lights there are in the scenes, more than the equipment that's involved. I think that's really important.
Yeah. By the way, somebody, Luis just mentioned that he watched a recent video of you doing an edit of a photo of a woman that you shot in a bathtub from above. And he's talking about that you're not just an excellent photographer, but you have great skills in Photoshop. And Anthony jumps in and says, yeah, your YouTube channel is very informative, well explained. So those of you who are not following Haze on YouTube, what is it they're going to search for in YouTube to find you on there, Haze?
Well, if you type HK Visuals, HK VISUALS, you should find me right away.
Okay, and just look, just look for that within YouTube, and you'll find him.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And yeah, it's funny that that person talked about that bathtub, because I was about to show not the one that not the one that he saw, but another one, uh, because it was a difficult image to pull off for a lot of different reasons. And I don't know. I think we have the time to talk about it. Yeah. Okay, here it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
So that was part. This is not one of the image that this didn't make the cut, because I talked about Fujifilm earlier, that campaign I did for them. So that was shot with that camera, and we didn't keep this one, but still it's a nice image, because I love the setting. I love the bathtub, and when I saw that bathtub, I knew I had to make something in it. I didn't know that I would actually compose it this way. But since I brought with me during those sessions a huge boom arm, I thought, hey, let's try and put it overhead and do something directly in it. And she was the perfect size for that, because she actually fitted perfectly inside. And yeah, we had fun. The room is really small. Something that you may not notice is, of course, you will not notice it because I erased it. You can actually see the walls in that shot. The walls on the left and the right side.
Wow.
And same thing for the light that's coming from above. It's a when you look at the image, it's on top left. Didn't have a lot of space to put that light, and I didn't have tons of options, in terms of lighting. I wasn't going for that type of lighting at first, but then I figured out the way she fitted inside and the different poses that she did. The only way to make it work was to put the light there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of during the time where I was looking for other ways to photograph my dancers, other angles, because I was feeling that I was always not shooting the same image, but having that same approach, changing my habits a little.
Yeah. Yeah. This is on the floor, Chris. He's shooting from above.
Yeah. You can actually see, because you mentioned my YouTube channel before, there is the behind the scenes video of this particular photo shoot and other photo shoots that I did where I use the same technique. So yeah, there's a boom arm, and you have the camera facing down at her, and I'm triggering the camera with my phone with the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And I don't think I've shown you a lot of action shots, so I'm going to briefly talk about one in particular. Where is it? Yes, there it is. So, yeah. Again, the fabric to add that dynamic, the movement. Wide angle. If I'm right, it's a 24 mil. That was shot a few years ago with the Canon 5D Mark III. So you don't need a huge, a super recent camera to make these type of shots, and only one light. Yeah, strangely, I would have loved to have more on that session, because now I feel that the background is maybe a bit too dark. But still,
I think because it's that dark, she pops out so well, but you still get a complete sense of the environment. So I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Haze. I think
okay.
my first question on this shot is, was somebody holding the fabric up high and she just jumped up and went into that split leap, or was she running? And because it's kind of amazing the way the fabric has ended up in this shot.
She's running. She's running, definitely running. we did like I don't know, a focus trap. Does that make sense to you? Like she was standing,
Huh?
I'm on tripod. So we set focus before she did the jump,
Right.
exactly basically where I would trigger and make my shot. And then she stepped back, run, and did the leap. And my assistant that day was following her, running with her, holding the fabric. And when she leaped, she let go of the fabric. In the original shot, you actually see the hands of my assistant like that in the air. And yeah, and what's great about this shot is Anna from she's I think she's still working there, the Ballet de Lyon. She's an amazing dancer, and I think we only did 3 shots for this one,
Wow.
and all 3 of them are uh, perfect. The timing and the pose and everything, and we
Right.
chose that one because the right leg was much more visible on this one than the others.
Hmm.
And I was shocked, before you asked me how many takes, how many shots does it take to get this kind of picture. So it really depends. Sometimes you get it right away, and sometimes, yeah, you have to take multiple shots to actually get what you want.
So
But what, yeah,
well, I just wanted to, I didn't mean to cut you off though. Were you gonna finish? Why don't you finish what you're
no, no,
saying?
no,
Okay. So
no, 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 nothing. Yeah,
okay. So the key thing is here is that I don't see, I mean, obviously we're looking at a small image, but I don't see any motion blur on her feet, which would tell me that the room was completely dark and she's only lit by the light with a very short flash duration. Is that correct? Or is there
well,
ambient light in here? And
no, there's not. I knocked down the ambient
yeah.
light, and my flash on I don't know if there's an equivalent for other flashes, but the Cirrus L by Broncolor, they have a speed mode,
Uh-huh.
which is made to actually keep the original speed sync of your camera. So I wasn't at a fast shutter speed here. I was, I think, at 1/200th of a second. But the speed mode, I don't know what the magic is in these flashes. Uh, can freeze the movements and reduce considerably the motion blur. And I was shooting tethered that day, so we checked with the first image. We checked right away if the motion blur was visible or not, and it wasn't. So we decided to go with those settings.
Right. That's the beauty of getting like a light that has a very short flash duration, because even though you're shooting at 1/200, the light is only there for 1/4000th of a second or one ten
Mm,
thousandth of a second, depending on the power and how good the light is. And that's what freezes it. So
yeah,
that's what makes it amazing. And the thing is too that works really well is that it looks like it's ambient light. You know what I mean? That's the beauty.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah. That we got lucky that day. Yes, and
Okay, do you want to talk about maybe one or even two more images, or what's your thoughts?
maybe one or two. I'm looking at them right now. Which one could be interesting? Oh yeah, this one, because I think you shared it on when you made the event, I believe, and it's a duo, so it's going to be a bit
Yeah,
different.
and while you're pulling that up, for those of you who learned about this webinar through Haze and they're not familiar with Padi da Photo, we are like an international dance photography community. We have a private Facebook page, Padi da Photo, but look for the group, not just the regular page. And we'd love to see you join us. We continue to do webinars like this every month. We have an annual conference. We have a conference coming up in February 24th to 27th in Austin. And yeah, so, okay, let's talk about this image here, Haze.
Yeah, that's part of the image that wasn't um, that wasn't planned. Same thing. It was during those sessions for Fujifilm, and that was one of the last shots. She brought with her that weird. I can't call that a dress because it's a curtain.
Right.
Ultimately, it's a, yeah. And she had already worked with me in the past, and we did an image together back then with fabrics. And when she went shopping one day, she saw that curtain. I thought, hey, I might bring it on a shoot with Haze if whenever I have the opportunity to shoot with him again. And that day she took this out of the bag, and I was like, well, what? What do you want me to do with that? I mean, it was a nightmare to shoot because every time they did the jump, we had to untangle each and every little, I don't know
Right.
what you call
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. The thread.
And so the threads, yeah. So it took much more time for us to set up each shot than to actually take the picture. We didn't take a lot of them actually for this one, but every time it took like 10 minutes to to straighten things out and to do it again. So that was I never thought that I would keep it, and in the end it was picked up in the final selection. And also it's typically the kind of lighting that I don't do now, because again, I'm back against a wall there, and I would have loved to have my lights a little further on the sides, which wasn't possible because the room is it's a corridor, it's a hallway.
Right.
So I'm using a wide angle again, and the lights were really against the walls, and I had to erase them also to have a clean shot. So yeah, that's part again of the you know, the thing you have to face when you're on location, and sometimes you have to handle small rooms, and you have to find a way to still get the shot.
Okay. Let's bring in one last
one last one. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's take where is it? Yeah, this one. Boom, boom.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Few years ago too. That's an oldie but a goodie. And this I had it was a bit different for this one, because usually what I do with fabrics is I keep it, I don't modify it in post. I leave it as is. Like almost all the images that I showed you so far, I didn't really touch the fabric. Here, it's a mix of 3 different fabrics. What I did here basically is I took multiple shots of the same fabric falling down at different stages. And then from those different stages, I'm going to take different parts and combine them together to have a little more add width to the fabric, and have a bigger fabric on screen. So this is a mix of 3 different, the same fabric, but at 3 different stages.
So,
and
go
yeah.
ahead. No, go ahead.
And the question you asked earlier about how many images that I took, I can't remember the exact number, but we started with this image, and it almost took the entire session because I wasn't happy with how the fabric behaved. I couldn't get the right form and shape, and it was really hard for me to pull off. And for her, poor dancer, she had to do the same pose and movements over and over again. But she did really. She's so talented that she was able to stay in the right spot all the time.
Now the fabric that you're using, it doesn't look as transparent as the silk chiffons that you know that I've used. So what is this, a silk, or you know, what is this? And also, are these fabrics yours, or are the dancers bringing them?
Usually they're mine. We discussed this before the shoot. So depending on the location and the outfits that we agreed upon, I look at the outfits, and I would tell them, okay, I have these kind of fabrics with me. Maybe we can try something at the end of the shoot if we have the time, and make a long flowing dress. And I used to have a few of them were silk, others were 100% cotton, and then sometimes a mix of synthetic and cotton. And I choose them according to the weight of the fabric. That's how you can get that those textures and movements. Because when it's too light, especially when we're doing this outdoors, then the wind will make it really tough for you to get that right shape. So when I go outdoors, I use fabrics that are really heavy, so
Uh-huh.
that I have that shape that you see in all my images. And when I'm doing stuff indoors, I'm going to take a lighter fabric. So that's how I do things these days.
That's cool. That's really amazing. Okay. JL had asked, when it comes to the poses, how much, how do you work with the dancers on doing that? Are you like, how much do you suggest, or do they just like give you different options and then you say, oh, that's the one I'd like to see? How does that work?
Usually, I show them the composition and framing.
Hmm.
I'm telling them, hey, this is what you're going to see on the image. This is where my light will be, and this is where you have to stand or maybe move or do whatever I want her to or him to do. And then I suggest, usually I show them, even though I'm not a dancer, kind of the position of the body and um, what works with the light setup that I chose for that particular shot that I'm trying to make. And then with all these information, they suggest different things. They're like, okay, you showed me that. Maybe we should do this like that. And then I look at the pose, and then we have this conversation where we build things together.
Yep.
But I always give them something to build off of, because they early on when I started working with dancers, I realized that some of them were really lost when I wasn't able to give them any information. You can't just tell them to, come on, dance and I'll shoot you. It doesn't make sense. So you have to give them like sort of a context, or sometimes even a theme, or and sometimes I go as far as really giving them really precise examples of things that I thought about before the shoot. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes they tell me, yeah, that's nice, but what if we did that pose this way, or I have another suggestion to show you, and then maybe her idea is better, and we'll develop something with her idea.
Yeah, there's, you're doing this with professional dancers, and many of our viewers work with pre-professional dancers, and some of them are used to being, said, here's the choreo, just do it, and some of the
Mm.
pre-professional dancers are able to come up with their own ideas. So, you know, uh, when you're working with a professional, it becomes a lot easier because, they have a much better understanding of things. But for those viewers who are, working with pre-professional dancers, especially younger ones, you're probably going to need to like direct them even more, to
Hmm.
find the pose that you want. So,
Well, when I started, they were not professionals, so I was really concerned about that. And what I did back then is do a lot of research online, and take examples with photos, and be like, okay, see these kind of poses, we can try and do something around that idea, and show them a visual example. That's what I used to do. And sometimes I would always tell dancers, don't look for the performance, because sometimes something really simple can really look really good.
mhm.
So you don't have to always do a thing super amazing and with super extensions and be arch all the way back. You don't have to do that. Sometimes a really simple image with the right lighting and the right composition could really
Absolutely.
be an amazing image. So depending on the experience, that's what I would do. If I feel that that person is not used to doing photos, or is not an experienced dancer, then I will simplify things and show them the results right away. Look, looks amazing. Let's continue and develop things like that.
Right. And especially with the younger and experienced dancers, it's a
Yeah,
photo shoot. They want to try something that they can't actually do because they've seen a
exactly.
professional dancer like this do it, and then they're not able to pull it off. So simplifying is much, and as you know, we, especially with a young and inexperienced dancer, we have to take control of it and say, let's tone this down, simplify. Exactly. Good. Okay. Wow, Hayes, this was really awesome. I do have one more question. It came from Marge.
Go ahead.
You know, I tend to see that that you shoot from like hip level down to, this looks like 4 level, and which you know is very flattering, I think, for the dancers, you know, because that really draws attention to their legs. Is that what you're doing? Like a lot of times, like it looks like you're down on the floor for this one.
Yeah, a lot of times that's what I do. Especially, I showed a lot of examples made with wide angle lenses, and that almost same approach, like you just said, you know, trying to emphasize on the legs and shooting from down low. I'm on the floor or maybe at the lowest height of my tripod most of the time. Even when I shoot without a tripod, I'm usually sitting on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine the height. That doesn't mean that I always do that. Sometimes I change my perspective. The extreme example is the bathtub shot, but really depends on the location. When I have a location like that, and when I want people to have the setting, to imagine the place, the entire place, then yeah, usually this will be my approach: wide angle on the floor or sitting on the floor, and with that perspective.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Hayes. This was really informative and educational and enlightening.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
really appreciate you being on here. Any final words you want to say to everyone? You know, let them know where they can be following you.
Well, yeah, like I said before, on YouTube or Instagram, it's the same name, HK Visuals. I often share behind the scenes videos and sometimes images, and share a bit of my experience, thoughts, and on the industry and photography in general there. So be sure to check that out. Thank you so much, Pas de Deux, Ron, Beth, for inviting me. It's really great. It's always a pleasure for me to share my experience with people, and in English, although it's not my, because it would have been easier for me in French, of course, but it's a great exercise for me to talk English with you, and share all this experience with all of you guys. So thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Okay, thanks everybody, and we'll catch you on the next webinar.
Bye.
Bye-bye.